In this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how you can accept payment using our PGPay integration into your platform. But first, what is PGPay, right? PG Ecom is an entire platform that focuses on the Haitian community that allows them to transact on the go. It doesn't matter if it's helping them do transaction online or launching their entire businesses. So we allow them to pretty much pay for anything online. But in your case, you are a merchant that want to do business in Haiti, or you have your businesses, you want to be able for Haitians people living in Haiti to be able to pay you with our integration. So how do you do this? And this is where PGPay comes in. PGPay is the entire integration, as you can see here in this documentation, that allows any Haitians indirectly pay for your service online. So we're going to show you exactly how pretty much everything works and how you can start using PGPay even today. You need to go to docs.pgecom.com. Once you go to this site, you'll pretty much see how you can pretty much get access to our APIs. Once you're ready, you can just request access and then we'll be able to help you launch your integration within one business stage, which is pretty easy to integrate with. However, in order for you to integrate PGPay, it's very, very easy. We're going to show you how easy it is in a second. But I want to show you how PGPay works in action. So this is a perfect example right here. This is a contest that is being run, and this allows every Haitian to be able to vote for everybody in Haiti. So as you can see, this platform called Only Waiter, if a user wanted to pay or for a vote, they come here, they choose a vote, and then this is where they come in, they enter their PGPay information, they enter their phone number, which could be a Haiti phone number, and then once they do that, they pretty much enter that, and then they click pay. Once that happens, then it's gonna take them to the PGPay checkout. Now, there are two things I want you to understand here on how PGPay itself works. The first item I want you to take a look at, which is very important. Once a user go to the PGPay checkout, if this user was already logged on into our system, PGPay will automatically detect that and makes the payment so easy. All they need is just for them to enter their PIN, which is extremely easy for them to pay. The second things that I want you to pay attention here, if the user is not logged in and they go to the PGPay checkout, all PGPay asks them to do is enter their phone number and then their PIN. Once they enter that, then the system gonna go ahead and send a code directly to their phone number, and they can be able to process that payment, and you as the merchant receive that payment with no issue. Now, before we go any further, there's one last thing that PGPay is extremely powerful for. And this is one of the reasons that PGPay is getting the market by storm. Everybody is accepting PGPay payment and everybody is using PGPay in order for them to pay. If you are a merchant that accepting payment from a user that's in Haiti, they need to be on our platform in order for them to pay with their PGPay account. But what about if the user is not on our platform or is not on PG Ecom platform, or they don't have an account on the PG Ecom platform? Well, all they got to do is choose the More Cash account, the More Cash option here. In More Cash, pretty much everyone in Haiti do have a More Cash account. Literally everyone. All they got to do is click the Pay with More Cash, and once they choose the More Cash option, they can process payment using their More Cash account, and you still benefit with the same integration. Once the payment happen, you'll be able to verify that payment with PGPay and complete that user integration with no issue. So I know this is a lot, but what I really want you to take away from this is how PGPay integration works. This is how it works. A lot of people are using it. For example, this is another example here. This is a user that do have a store on WordPress. If you use WordPress before, you know one of the most popular platform out there is called WooCommerce. So if anybody want to launch a store online using WooCommerce, then they can pretty much integrate with our PGPay plugin directly in Mocash, and they can accept payment using PGPay. So this is a quick overview on how PGPay works, but how do you integrate PGPay into your platform? Well, if you are using WordPress, it's pretty easy. All you gotta do is follow our documentation, go under the WordPress section. Then once you are inside the WordPress section, you can literally find the plugin right here. You download it, you kind of go with the step-by-step process, and until you kind of get this plugin installed, and you can start accepting payment right away. So this is, if you're not technical, you just want to be able to use WordPress to install it, you can pretty much do that. But what if you are using something that is not WordPress? You want to be able to do the integration end-to-end on yourself. You want to be able to integrate PGPay into your platform just like Only Winner does. How do you do that? Well, in order for you to do this, you're going to navigate to the doc. You're going to look for where it says payment. Okay. And once you go here, you'll click on the PGPay options. And once you come here, This docs pretty much walk you through what you need in order to set up PGPay. And what that means is you need to go to the settings, go to the developer account, and yada yada, and you kind of follow this and you kind of do this, and then you get the integration ready to go. So we're gonna do this together. So first thing first, when you go to the PG Ecom platform, we also have a sandbox environment. And this is also documented into the API. So if you go to sandbox environment, you'll see that we have a sandbox. We also have a production environment. So in your case, you'll go to the sandbox environment, you'll create an account, you'll sign up, you'll pretty much get your sandbox environment set up. So in this case, I am inside a sandbox environment, and this is my account on the sandbox environment. So remember, the first thing we need to do, according to the documentation, to get the PGPay ready to go, we need to configure it. So I'm going to go back to the sandbox environment. I'm going to go to settings. So in this settings, once I go to the settings, I'm going to go on developer. Okay. And then there's a couple of things you could use here. Number one, you can just use the user ID. You do not need the public key. You do not need the secret key. You need those if you want to further do more operation on your account, such as sending funds directly from your account to another user, or you be able to create gift cards. Then you need the API key and the secret token in order for you to do that. But for the PGPay integration, you don't need none of this. All you need is your user ID. That's literally everything you need. So I'm going to copy this user ID, and then you're going to follow that documentation again. So there are two things you need to do in order to start accepting payment for PGPay. The first one is you need to create what they call a payment, which is pretty much a payment checkout, right? And in order for you to do this, you need to hit this endpoint, and then you pretty much pass this entire parameter. There's a lot of parameter here that you can pass, but the two important parameters that you need to pass is what they call user ID. Okay, so you'll pass your user ID, which is the user ID that you saw me just copied earlier. So you need to pass that in your payload. And then the second one is how much you want to charge this user for. If you want to charge them for $50, if you want to charge them for $30, and then you pass that amount using our PGPay integration. And then third, if you do have, if you want to set up your own order ID so that you can retrieve it later, you could do that. This is completely optional. If you want to pass the user's phone number, you could also do that. If you want to pass the description of the transaction, and if you want to pass the success and error URL, and there's a lot more here that you can pass. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to start with the amount and the user ID so that you can see how you can integrate them. And then as we go along, we're going to start using some of these payloads so that you can kind of take a look at them. And without even using the API, you can even see what is the response that you get back once you make a successful request. So this is a good sample of a successful request. And if you make a bad request, this is what you're going to get if you get a bad request. And then based on the technology that you're using, if you're using Node.js, you can see a pretty good example of Node.js. If you're using Python, you can kind of see an example of Python. Based on the language that you're using, you can see different example using PGPay. So we're going to use this in Node.js, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how that works. So I'm going to pull up a place called repo. Again, this is pretty much an online place where you can go ahead and start writing code. So the first thing we need, we're going to copy the endpoints, which is pretty much this endpoint. So I'm going to come here and copy this endpoints right here. So we got this basic endpoints. In this case, you can see here. So I pretty much start here and get this endpoints, right? So I get this one here. So we're going to pass this one as a param. So we can see in a second. So once I have this starting endpoint, which is where every call for our API start with, okay? I'm going to create a function that's going to call create PGPay payment, because this is going to be a payment we're going to create with PGPay. I'm going to zoom that so that you can kind of see this clearly. And I'm going to go ahead and do that so you can see everything clearly with your eyes. So once I have that, I'm going to go here and use the payload I'm going to pass. So in this case, I'm going to come here and pretty much replace this with my user ID. Like you saw, you pass the amount that you want to pass for that request. And then once you build that payload, again, this payload I'm building is everything from here. You can pass the user ID, you can pass the phone number, you can pretty much pass everything you want to pass. And then third, I'm going to go ahead and start building what they call my options in order to make that API request. So in this case, I'm using a post request. So if you notice, this is a post request right here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a post request, and I'm going to pass the header as a JSON. We only accept JSON, and then we're going to pass the body of the request. So in this case, we take this information, we stringify it, we pass it as the request, and all we got to do now is literally just making that HTTP request. In this case, we're going to be using fetch, and boom, I make that request. So I'm going to come here and explain what's happened. So we use this endpoint, again, what you saw here, which is this endpoint, and then we pass it the path, which is where this token is located. So in another word, all we got to do, if we come back to the documentation here, this endpoint is going to represent something like this. So this is what we are building right here. This is literally what we are building right here. But in fact, instead, we kind of break it down. We make it the endpoints, and then we pretty much have the token here, and then we pass the options for the fetch request. Once we get a fetch request, we check if this request was successful. If it was successful, if it was not, we throw an error. And then if it was successful, we pretty much return a JSON. Again, this is using the built-in fetch function in JavaScript. And once you have your successful request, in this case, we're just going to go ahead and log that request. I'm just logging to see what we receive from this request right here. And in case there's an error, you can go ahead and kind of catch your errors and do pretty much everything you want to do with it. And then lastly but not least, all you got to do now is just call this function. In this case, this is a function that we create with the request to make the payment. And we literally just invoke that function. It is easy. In less than 38 lines of code, I should be able to get a successful checkout payment for my user to go to and pay with PGPay. So let's run this and see. I'm going to run this in Node.js. So I'm going to run this token here, and boom, I got a successful response. And this is the response that I get back. I get the amount, I get the user ID, I get the order ID, which is the ID for the order. I got the payment method, which is PGPay, and I got a status of my payment, which is currently pending, and I got a delivery stuff and the quantity and some order information. But the most important information that you need here is this redirect URL. This is the URL that you're going to send the user to. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this entire URL. I'm going to literally copy it. And I'm going to open a new tab, or I can just open this tab. I'm going to paste it here. So once I paste this one in here, and you can see now it takes me to the PGPay integration, and all I got to do is complete that transaction using my PGPay account. Again, it detects that the user is already logged in, and I can complete that account, that payment, and I can also feel free to check out. But before we do any payment, there's one thing I want to show you, which is very important with PGPay, which is extremely useful. The moment you create a checkout session for a user, what's going to happen is you're going to start receiving that checkout payment that we just create as part of your payment right here. You can see that the status is pending. This is the $20 checkout that we create. But one thing I want to be able to show you, which going to give you a lot more information about that user. So for example, here, you can come here. If I go back to this payment, I'm going to go ahead and adjust a couple things. So I'm going to come back to the payload, and I'm going to come here and pretty much pass that user's email. So I can come here and say, hey, I want to come here and pass this customer email, right? So I'm going to say, hey, this customer email is going to be my email. And all I got to do is clear this code, and I'm going to go ahead and run that payment again. And the moment I do run this payment, I'm going to copy this redirect URL one more time. So I'm going to come here and copy this redirect URL. I'm going to go back, delete that, and paste this new checkout URL. But what I want to show you is the moment you create a new checkout URL with customers information, you start seeing the user that started the payment for you, which is pretty cool that you can start using, which is great. So let's finalize this payment. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this. I'm going to come here and open this in a new tab. I'm going to show you how, when a user is in Haiti, for them to pay. So if they are on our platform, all they got to do is enter their phone number. I'm going to go ahead here and enter my phone number. So the user entered their phone number, and they're going to go ahead and enter their PIN. So I'm going to come here and enter their PIN. What's going to happen is if you are in production, they're going to send them a code directly to the phone number because I'm in the test environment. So I'm going to enter this code. And if everything goes as expected, you can see now I have a successful payment, which is great, which is fantastic. Okay. So once you have a successful payment, so if you go back to your order, you can come here, refresh this order page. Now you can see here in this case, these are all the payment that I was able to get successfully on my PGPay integration. So in this case, this user pay, this is the user that processed the payment. This is the amount that they pay. This is the fee that you charge for PGPay. PGPay do have a fee of 1.5% plus 0.6 cent per transaction. So in this case, this is the fee that you pay for the PGPay integration, and this is the transaction type. So you can see everything goes as expected. But how do you verify a payment was successful using PGPay? Well, when you create the token or when you create the payment checkout, if you do remember, there is a token that PGPay returns for you. This token can be used to verify the status of the transaction. So when we initiate this payment, you can see the status of this transaction was pending. So now if I copy this exact token, I'm going to go here and copy this token. If you go again, there is an endpoint where you can verify the payment with a token. You can see the endpoints, pretty much how it works. You can see different example here. So in this case, I'm going to come here and do the same thing. I'm going to build that endpoints. I'm going to create a function to verify the payment. I'm going to go here and pass my token. So in this case, this is the token. I'm going to go ahead and pass that token. I'm going to build that options. And then all I got to do is just make that HTTP request. You can see this is the endpoint I'm using. And this is checking if the response was successful or not. And then this is where I handle my successful response. So in your system, you can pretty much add this scenario in order for you to verify the payment. I need to invoke this function. We're going to come here and invoke this function, and I'm going to run this one again. And now you can see I got the status response back. In this case, it is completed, and this is what you'll depends on in order for your system to be able to understand when a payment was successful using PGPay, which is great, which is awesome, which is fantastic. But there's a lot more you could do with PGPay. So when you go back, when you are creating a payment for PGPay, you can pass the successful URL. So what that means is I can come here within my PGPay payment. You can pass a successful URL. So if I come here and say, hey, I want to pass a successful, and this is where you want to send the user after a payment was successful. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new payment. So once I create this new payment, I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL right there. I'm going to right click and copy this, and then I'm going to go back and paste this new URL in this. So I'm going to try to process the payment again. Then at this point, I'm going to go here. They're going to send me a code. I'm going to go ahead and enter this payment. The moment I verify this, what I want you to pay attention here is I pass it this redirect URL. And the fact that you pass it this redirect URL, what's going to happen is this. It's going to redirect to this redirect URL that you pass it. But the cool thing about this is also going to redirect it with some other additional param. So in this case, if I change this redirect URL, and I'll verify that payment, and then the moment that happened, you can see now it redirect me to this exact URL that you pass it, in this case Google. But one thing to keep in eye here, it redirected with the status code. And what that means is you can use that status code to decide either or not you should check to verify if the payment was completed. And then you also get the order that you receive plus the token as well that we redirect with you back to the URL. So that's pretty much how the PGPay works. One last thing I want to show you before I wrap up this video. You also has the ability to pass the user phone number. So in this case, I go ahead here and pass the user phone number directly in the payload. The moment I do, I go ahead here and copy this URL. And the moment I come here and I paste this in there, and what's going to happen is the phone number will automatically pre-fill for the user as a way for you to check the checkout. The last thing, there's a lot that you could do with the PGPay endpoints. And again, if you want to use some other endpoints, you could use the customer first name, email, and even the chat enable. And what that means is you can see here once the user go, there's a live chat support here that you can pass. If you don't want that to show whenever the user is about to process a payment, you could say is chat enable. You can set this one to false. You could possibly just run a payment again. And I'm going to go here through this redirect endpoint. So if I come here and then go back to this, I'm going to paste this new endpoint in there. What's going to happen in this case, the chat is going to disappear. Now, the cool thing with PGPay, if the payment has already been processed, in this case, I go ahead here and process this payment, and I'll redirect the user back to wherever you want us to redirect it. In this case, Google. This is one example. But if the user try to come back, the PGPay will automatically detect that, hey, this order has already been processed. It will not allow the user to complete or to kind of go ahead and process or pay for the same order again. So that was PGPay in a nutshell. Again, there's a lot of documents available for you, so feel free to explore. There's a lot more you could do. The last thing, if you want to pass some data, additional data for you to be able to receive back on your order. So in this case, if I come here and say, hey, I want to pass some extra metadata, and what that means is in case that your system want those metadata to be used, you could say, hey, you want is vote enable for your own system, or for example, you want to calculate number of votes for your internal system. This is something that you can pass some extra additional data. So what's going to happen in this case, when you do run this payment, I'm going to come here again. And if I go here, I'm going to process this payment. And once I process this payment, if you go back to the order, and then once I go to this order and click on this payload, and now if you take a look at, you can see now I do have some extra metadata. There are some that are provided for you by default, but the one you just added, which is this one, and that you could consume whenever you are fetching the order. And again, if you want to verify the order was processed, you can take this token, you copy this token, and then you go back to the verify endpoints. In this case, I'm going to go ahead here and pass this token right there. And once I run this code, I'm going to run the verify endpoints. And now once I get the order, you can see here, there is the customer data that got created for you. And then also within the metadata, you can see now this number of vote that we passed it earlier, which is this one inside the metadata. I'm able to retrieve them back inside your metadata information, which is really, really, really great. And you can kind of build whatever system that you want to build in order for you to be able to accept payment with it, which is super, super cool. So that was PGPay, and I hope you guys enjoyed building it, building with it and accept payment with it, just like we enjoy building PGPay ourselves. Thank you so much, and see you in another video.